Alright, here we've got my new Gaui X5 going through the build here. I've already got everything assembled. I've got some pictures and some notes that I'm going to put up in the thread. I just did want to start from here and do a few videos, kind of talk about my components choice and placement, and some things that I found when I was building the bird, and just touch base a little bit about building up the head and stuff, which I'll make a separate video for later. But yeah, all in all, the build went together very well, very cleanly. This Gaui X5 is just a pure joy to work on. It's just a very thoughtful and straightforward setup. You know, there's a bunch of other build threads out there where it shows a lot of great HeliFreak users showing the frame being built in steps, and so I didn't want to take away from any of that or try and reinvent the wheel. So I thought I'd start from here with kind of what I chose and some things that I found. You know, for component choice, of course, you got the stock motor and speed controller here. I did go ahead and put things in, I guess they're relatively stock positions. Got the speed controller here. It's got the nice spark arrestor built right into it. It's the 100 amp speed controller. Scorpion 4020 910 kilovolt motor as well. I also went with the Hyperion high voltage servos. I've got the DH20X SCD around the cyclic here, and the DH20X GCD here for the tail. Super clean install. One thing that I did notice with these ones here, and I don't know if it's just the case measurements or what on these here, but I did notice that the hole spacing from here to here is just ever so slightly closer than the hole placement I have on the case. It may just be the way that I had things lined up, but I did kind of have to fiddle in there and just kind of work the screw in to get it started. But once it was in there, it was fine. I went ahead and mounted the B-stacks excuse me, in the stock location down here. A footnote about this: I've been reading up a lot on mounting tape and whatnot. This one here, I'm actually using some 3M indoor-outdoor adhesive tape. It's the 411 is the model. Let me see if I can find it here, and I'll kind of show it to you. But it's a super strong tape. It's the gray, you know, it's the gray stuff. It's about a millimeter thick. It's got the red backing on it here. Very strong holding tendencies, and a lot of B-stacks guys have been having really good results using this tape here. When they're dealing with flybarless setups, whether it be the B-stacks like we're doing here, or the mini V-bar, full-size V-bar, even, you know, your standard gyros and stuff work great with that as well. So that's a great tip. The 3M 411, it's kind of like the 4010 tape, but it's another thin, strong tape. It has really good vibration characteristics, so you don't need to have a lot of it. Some people will stack 1 or 2 layers if they need a little bit more damping, but I've actually had better results using that than using the stock stuff that comes with the B-stacks. You guys all already know the stock mounting tape. You got the Sakusi stuff, or else the yellow stuff that, or the yellow-orange stuff that comes in the packaging. You know, start off with that stuff, the stock stuff, and if it just doesn't seem to be fitting the bill, if your cyclic feels like it's a little mushy or a little bobbly, and you've already done all your tuning that you can do on the B-stacks, if you try a different mounting tape, you may get a more direct feel with the cyclic when you're running that here. If you haven't already done it, speaking of the B-stacks, take yourself over to the B-stacks forums here on HeliFreak, because there's a lot of excellent information out there. I've got a whole series of build threads for each one of the steps, the setup steps out there. NWM Tech is a HeliFreak user that put a great tuning guide together for how to tune this up once you have it set up in flight, so that you can get the characteristics that you're looking for. So just another tip about that. But a little bit more about component and wire placement here. As you guys already know, I'm kind of a stickler for really clean wire routing. So as you'll see here, I just ran the servo leads in some heat shrink, I was actually able to tuck the heat shrink up under the stock grommets that come on the servos, so it's a very Sano setup. I went with the black for kind of a stealth look, but again, I have to give it up to Gaui. Very thoughtful placement for the components, very thoughtful I guess setup on the frame for wire routing. They put the little channels here to bring your servo leads under the frame, and also these nice convenient spots for some zip ties and whatnot to run your wires underneath here. I'm not going to be using this grommet here. I'm not going to be putting the giant zip tie on my battery. I'm just going to use the stock black Gaui straps, you know, and some hook and loop on that. But I did mod the frame ever so slightly. I just took my Dremel and I dremeled a couple of nice small holes, did little slits here for me to run some zip ties on these wires here too, just to keep them solid. You know, there's slack on these wires here, so I'm not going to strain the servos themselves or anything like that. But it keeps everything down like I wanted to, so in flight I don't have any G-forces pulling anything around. I'm going to be running a 2-cell pack direct for the electronics. I'm going to disable the BEC here. You know, I went with a 1600 milliamp pack, but when I look, it looks like it's going to be a little bit big, so I'm going to find a place to place that for now, and I'll run on this. You know, I've got some 2-cell 900 milliamp packs that I might just go with those instead. It depends on how often I want to charge versus fly, I guess, but you can see 900 milliamps, 1600 milliamps, really the only difference is maybe an inch worth of length here. But I think either one of these, I should be able to sneak up under the frame. My goal is to mount it in the frame so that I have access for the charge leads. That I'm going to use these actually to run a servo lead on to the Beast X. Or if I use one of my packs from my Gaui 200, I'll just create a Dean's to servo connector so I can run a direct 2-cell LiPo. Again, I want to do what I can to get this in the frame if possible. I mean, this is all empty space up under here, so there's plenty of room for that. I just want to make sure not to go into this region here because, you know, the pinion sits right there. So yeah, I hope you like the wiring. There's more pictures with more detail further in the thread, so if you check those out, really great choice for the wire routing there. Now I did pick up the frame stiffener and the battery settle kit is what they call it. Now when I look at this settle kit, if I was to mount this, it's actually going to come across the frame and go over the top of these holes that I've chosen to use for my wire routing. I want those there, so I may just Dremel it off and skip these last 2 screws. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll just take my Dremel and run a groove in here so I can get the wires through the settle kit and through the frame. But again, my goal here is to have a nice Sano install. I'm not as worried about the battery banging up against the motor. I think if I get into a position where I'm gonna crash that hard, that's the least of my worries. But we'll see how that goes here. I'll go over some detail when I put this together, if this ends up working or not. Again, I ran all my servo leads up along the back. They're hiding right under this back plate. Another little tip here too, with regards to wire protection, and even to give you a little bit of a dampening assistance, if you will. The wife and I, you know, the way that the weather is around here, we got to take the ACs in and out and in and out all the time. So I've ended up with a lot of these strips of just a thin rubber padding that's typically supposed to use around the edge of your window when you put an air conditioner in. But the second purpose, it serves great for mounting on carbon fiber or some sort of other component that you're going to have a wire running next to, so that you don't have the wire vibrating against the hard carbon fiber or chafing around a corner. I did the same thing on my my 550. The way I had the wires routed on the 550 was in roughly the same location. They came out of the corner of a servo opening. I didn't want them to rub against here, so I just ran a little bit around the edge on nice clean grommets. So that's a little tip if you might have something like that laying around the house. Nothing wrong with getting inventive. So I actually have that stuff running up the entire inside of this back tray here, because all of my wires, let me flip it this way, all my wires are actually under this servo kind of just tucked in there and just looped around. But they do press when I have this open, I can unscrew this and get to all my wiring. When I push this back, they're all laying against there, and I didn't want them to get chafed. And plus, it helps with dampening or vibration resistance with the wires on their way to the B stacks. They're not zip tied up under there or anything like that. They just lay flat on there. They're not going to go anywhere. So that's another tip about that. It's very nice. One thing I did notice, and I did skip around in the manual as I was doing these steps. The manual calls for you to put the frame together, put the bottom plate with the landing gear on the frame, and then mount all your servos. And then after that, you're supposed to set up the motor and the motor mount, right? I chose to put the frame together, build the lower landing gear and bottom plate set, and just put those to the side. Then what I did was I'd mount the motor, and the nice thing is then you have easy access right up underneath to look straight down and see your pinion mesh, run your paper through, or whatever you're going to do. Another tip, because the motor mount is 4-position, you can just take the 2 side screws, tighten them down, take this back screw, or I'm sorry, this front screw under the gear up on the motor mount down there, and just snug them up, not too tight, but enough where you can move the motor. Then you have one screw that you can work with. When you find your mesh, tighten that sucker down, the motor's not going to go anywhere. And then you've got plenty of time to unmount the motor mount, Loctite all your screws and all of that stuff, and then you'll know when you put the motor mount back, it's going to be exactly where you want it. So if you can hear that, I've got perfect mesh. Your what I think the manual calls for a 0.1 millimeter or something crazy. Basically just your paper trick all the way around the gear. So I saw some early threads about people having trouble with that, and some people new to Gaui worrying about the whole motor mount off, motor mount on, motor mount off, trial and error. That's a great way to do it. Just set your mesh before you do this part here. You can see right down through the frame. You can drop one of your drivers right down in there, tighten that screw up, and you're good to go. So just remember that tip. I did forget to take pictures of me doing that, so if somebody else has a picture of their helicopter from underneath looking at the pinion, feel free to add it to the build thread when I get it done. But that pretty much covers the frame. Receiver choice, you'll notice that I'm running the one satellite receiver. Again, I heat shrink the lead all the way into the frame here, so it stays nice and firm where I want it. Use that 411 tape on here. This thing is not going anywhere, so I don't need a Velcro strap or anything extra. But here's a footnote about the Spectrum satellite receivers. There's a thread floating around HeliFreak about the Spectrum receivers, in that the 2 antennas here, it's not a dipole setup. They're not both antennas. One of them is a ground, and actually if you're looking at the receiver, the one that's on the left side here is the antenna. This side creates a ground plane. So I chose to mount it in such a way where this antenna is upwards into the open air. It's not immediately obstructed by any carbon fiber. So I think that I shouldn't have to worry about any sort of radio hits or shadowing. Shouldn't have too much of that going on when I'm flying. I've got the same single satellite set up on my Gaui 550, and I have yet to have a radio hit, and I put that thing farther away than I can tell the orientation. So I'm confident that it's going to work, and I know with the version 3 of the B-Stacks coming out, and soon hopefully to be released, the dual satellite adapter, I'll be able to have this one here, and I'll probably mount another satellite maybe over here on this side, down low or near the front or something like that. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward build, really fun to do it, and I stay tuned for the next videos. I'm going to kind of go over the head a little bit and whatnot. I also did steal the CNC tail boom clamp off of my 550. I had to put it on the X5. I got to make it look nice. So again, with wire routing, just real quick before I finish, I ran the motor wires under the battery plate right to the speed controller, so they're just laying right underneath the frame here. So easy access. If I got it, I just pop 2 screws off. I can take this off and get to those bullets if I need to. But otherwise, it makes for a very, very clean installation. I'm not a fan of wires on the outside of the frame. It was worth it for me to take that extra time to do that. Thanks for watching my build videos, and stay tuned for the next one where I go over how to turn this and this, let's see, this and this, and some of these balls into a fly-barless head, so that we can program the VSTEX. All right, thanks a lot.